G'day, I am Appy Dave, and today we're going to look at a AI operating system. This is first impressions, and basically over the weekend I tested out a few of the capabilities. So this is partly showcasing what it can do and also my work through of what I looked at. So if you've heard, there's this operating system called O1 Lite, and it's just been released and it's available for download. And what it's meant to do is, through a little device, allow you to control your computer with your voice using ChatGPT sort of technologies. So basically what you can do is you can teach it various application workflows. And one of the examples that they give in the video is to open up the Slack application, press the Command K button, and then find a person named Ty. Once that person has been found, click on the message box and send them a message saying, "Hi Ty." And the idea is that when you've done this, you can save this concept as a skill that you can replay later on. So later on, what they do is they talk about workflows using desktop applications and mainly a pipeline of apps and websites, so running multiple things in a sequence. And the example they give here is the pipeline example. They've gone and got an invoice, they've got it on their mobile phone, and they decide they want to send it to Slack. And it starts connecting with Slack on the home computer. They were running it from out in the field, and basically the invoice ends up in Slack. So this has been put forward at 99 US dollars for O1 Lite. And what I went and did was downloaded the open source project called Open Interpreter, and I wanted to test a few different examples. There was one example I'd seen on the internet. I wanted to try that, plus a couple of my own. So the first thing that you've got to do to install this AI operating system is really just do a pip install Open Interpreter. Now, once that's done, you'll get a whole lot of information about whether it's installed. If it fails, you'll have to look into why that might be, but it was fairly easy for me to get it up and running. From there, it was just a case of run interpreter from the command line. Now, one of the things that you've got to do is set up an API key to something like OpenAI, and that's what I did. So I went into OpenAI, created a brand new key, in this case called David Open Interpreter, and then just clicked on copy to put that into my bash shell and all that. So one of the things I did was I ran interpreter dash help, and you get a list of commands that you can run with the interpreter. And the one I was interested in was the API key. I wanted to see how you could pass the API key in. And there are three different techniques that you might want to try. You could just export your key to OpenAI API key and then just run interpreter, or you could call interpreter with dash API key and the value. The one I went with was a combination of the two. I exported and then I just grabbed it by name down here. So from there, I wanted to then test out some concepts. So the first test I got working. It was a little bit of a rough start, but let's walk through it. So on my computer, I went over to my user directory and went into the development Python folder, and I just started running interpreter with the access token. And I wrote a prompt, can you list all the folders at this particular location? And the location I chose was my dev folder at my user location. And what it's done is you start running it, it comes up with a plan of action that it wants to do. And it says, here's the plan, use OS module in Python. So it starts off using Python. And then in step 2, it moves over to shell or iterm to do the rest of the work. So here's the Python code that it created. It said desired directory ~dev. Let's expand it so we get user / David Crewis in my case, and then we'll change into the directory and get current working directory. Would you like to run this code? And I said yes, and it said great, here's the directory you want. That's exactly what I wanted. And then it's come up with an ls-d // and said, would you like to run this code? I said yes. And The first thing I noticed was that it did not give me the folders from my development directory. So the location says that it's ~dev, but these are not the folders that are in my dev directory. So I thought, what's going on here? Did a present working directory and an ls just to check that I wasn't incorrect. That's exactly what's in a particular folder called Python. And essentially what's happened here, and I wrote it as a prompt, I said, in the Python code, you expand to ~dev, but in the ZS shell, you ran ls-d and you gave me the folders from the current folder of the shell rather than the ~dev directory. So I've made this statement to it and it's basically said, yeah, okay, I've made that mistake, and it's tried to rerun it again, and this time it got it correct. So the second attempt it worked. Now, I think the really interesting thing to be aware of with a system like this, and this is not necessarily how a normal end user would use it, but definitely using it from the command line I did, this is how a lot of people will be using it to start off with, is that you do need to check that it's not doing something disastrous. Because if I'd have asked it to delete a particular folder, it could have deleted my home directory. And that's a challenge that you've got to be aware of with these sort of products. So I thought, well, let's move on to a different thing. Let's control a web application. Now, you saw at the beginning that the example given was for Slack. And I've got a project management tool that I use called ClickUp. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be good if I could add a task to ClickUp, kind of the same way as they sent a message to Ty within Slack. So I wrote a prompt and I said, I use ClickUp for project management. My AppyDave project is at this location. I gave it the fully qualified URL where this particular project is. And I said, can you add a new ticket via Chrome for a video called YouTube Automation Army using Crew AI? And what it went on to do was start coming up with a plan. And the plan it's given is to use a headless browser to do all the work that's needed. It's got the URL listed right here. That is the correct URL that I wanted to go to. It's suggesting that it'll use the Selenium driver with Chrome and Python. I thought, okay, it looks okay. I didn't look at it too detailed when I ran it. I thought, let's just see what happens. And what it's done is it's written all this Python code. Again, we've got the folder listed here, or the URL I should say, and it said, would you like to run it? I said yes. Now, it failed, but it didn't really tell me why it failed. It just didn't work. And one of the things I noticed when I was looking at it is there was a hallucination in the data it gave, in that the data that I asked for ended in Z6BF, but what it wrote into the URL down below was a different value altogether. Now, I don't believe that was really where the real error was. That was just one error. One of the things that you can see here is that if you're going to log on to an application like ClickUp or whatever, you probably need some sort of authentication path, and that's not going on here. Now, at the time, I just tried a different technique. It came up with a second example automatically. I thought, you could use JavaScript. It got to here, it told me what it was going to do, install Puppeteer, run through different things. Now, I didn't take this much further. I let it install the code for me and didn't run it any further because I knew that without any authentication, this wasn't really going to work anyway. So this whole idea of wanting to run the browser wouldn't work the way it suggested. The other technique that probably would have worked okay is if it used AppleScript to just click through. That would probably work okay. But this second example for me didn't work at all. First one worked with a bit of tweaking. The second one didn't work at all. So let's go and look at maybe an easier technique. Actually, before we do, this is basically how much it is at the moment. Personally, I do plan to wait for O1 Lite. It is something I want to get. For me in Australia, it's $170. At the moment, it's $109 in the US. But let's go and have a look at controlling the operating system, see what we can do with that. So I said, I have a Mac and I have 4 different applications. I'm just informing it basically. I said, I've got iTerm, Chrome, Finder, and System Preferences. What are 4 use cases you could try? I thought, let's see what it comes up with. And it said, you can send emails using mail.app. You could create a calendar event. You could refresh your Chrome tabs, or automating system preferences. And here it said light mode to dark mode. So all I've done is typed in 4 just to see what happens, and it's come up with just different ways you could use Apple script. So I gave it a little bit more detailed prompt. Essentially, I asked it to, I wonder where I put that. Here it is. Can you set the system to light mode? And what it's done is given me a plan of action. Now, you can see I started off with a dark mode setup. Now, I have my system preferences in the left, I've got Finder, and then I've got Chrome, and there's another little window down here, and everything's dark at the moment. I've given it this question, can you set the system to light mode? And it's basically given me Apple script to run. It looks okay to me. I thought, okay, let's press yes, see what happens. And automatically, I got light mode on my Mac. The only thing that wasn't light mode was Chrome, and that's because Chrome has its own settings that you can set. So this has set all the system settings okay. So I was pretty happy with this. Now, do I recommend O1 Lite? Should you get it? Look, I think this is going to be a really good product at some stage. The ability to control it using the little microphone device that they've got, and having concepts like saving skills and replaying them, that makes sense to me. Trying to run it from the command line, there's a few hurdles that you need to be aware of. That's the main thing. Now, for me, I run a GPT Academy. Essentially, I try to do 99% of everything I do on the computer. I love using ChatGPT. I love the prompt engineering. So if you're interested in learning how you might want to take advantage of that in small groups, then come and check out the link below where you can sign up to the GPT Academy. I'm Happy Dave. Love you to like and subscribe if you find this sort of information valuable, and I'll see you in the next video.